Hello and thank you for tuning in to Millennium Movies. This is the second episode of the Is It Scary series where I look at every horror movie releasing this year and give you my spoiler-filled thoughts. Yes, that is spoiler-filled, so this video does contain spoilers for the movie Underwater. If you have not seen it, go watch it, do yourself a favor, and then come back here and we can have this discussion together. I love talking about movies. That's what we do on the channel, so let's go ahead and get right into it. Let's stop wasting time. So Underwater is not a perfect movie per se. This isn't Ridley Scott's Alien, but it's still a very fun movie that I enjoyed watching. And if you like sci-fi, horror, and just a good time at the movies, then that's Underwater. This is what that movie is. It doesn't give any false promises. It tells you right off the bat what it is and what you're in for, and it sticks to that. It knows what it is. This movie doesn't try to go into any like really deep philosophical sort of stuff, and it doesn't go off the rails, and it doesn't get too cheesy, and sure, it's not reinventing the wheel, but it's a movie that just works. It's a good, well-executed movie. It's an hour and 35 minutes long, and it goes straight into the chaos within, I think the first 2 or 3 minutes. It's constantly moving. The pace is really sweet. There's great set pieces, wonderful, intense sequences both on the ocean floor and inside the underwater rigs that the characters find themselves in. And what I appreciated most about this movie was really its faithfulness to the realities of deep sea diving. When they get inside their suits to escape the first rig, and that poor kid's entire body imploded due to the water pressure, that really got me. I was like, wow, I was so on edge of like this terrifying situation that they found themselves in, where they're trapped like nearly 7 miles deep below the ocean surface, and I hadn't even considered the very real possibility of death by water pressure, and that's how the very first death in this movie occurs, is just by pure water pressure, not even monsters, just the harsh reality of nature itself, and exploring places that humans have no business stepping foot on. And what made that death sting just a little bit more was the fact that before they left, he actually switched out his helmet with Kristen Stewart's, and she realized that he knew it was a broken helmet. So rather than to risk her life, he risked his, and ultimately he paid the ultimate price for that. But I think that little moment showed the overall goodness of his character and a lot of these characters, because I wouldn't say that many of them got huge character development, because this movie is moving at such a quick pace that it doesn't allow for many moments for these characters to just kind of like sit down and take a moment to catch their breath and reflect on things. But when they do, we get some very nice moments, and these are all very likable and good people who are just trying to survive this shitty scenario together. None of them feel like action hero stars of like the 80s and the 90s. No, these feel like very real people who are just doing everything in their power to make it through this. So I really appreciate the way that they went about writing these characters. TJ Miller was funny like he always is. I wish he lasted longer in the film, but he got completely ripped out of his own suit by one of the creatures, and that was a brutal death scene for sure. Yeah, that was a cool death scene. I wish he would have stuck around longer, but he didn't. I really liked the captain's cool-headedness. He made a very improbable situation seem achievable. And in the third act, there's a revelation with his character that his daughter died at the age of 14, but he kept it a secret from his crew, because earlier when Jessica Henwick's character was asking him about his daughter, he said that she was 14, but Kristen Stewart kind of gave him this look, and she was like, what? 14? She should be around my age by now. But she didn't know about her death. So going back to the start of the film, now it makes sense why he stayed behind, because she was like, hey, you have a daughter. Why are you down here? He wanted to make sure that everyone else lived, because he has nothing left to live for. He doesn't have his daughter. He mentioned that he's now divorced. And so, for him, I think just that tiny bit of character development gave his death a little bit more meaning. And I really appreciated that aspect of this film. Kristen Stewart is a damn star. And if you're still giving her and Robert Pattinson shit for being in the Twilight movies, then you just don't understand how film and acting choices work. Because they only did those movies to afford the luxury now of picking and choosing what types of more passionate and smaller films that they decide to be a part of. And granted, this isn't a very small film because it has a big budget, but still, she's fantastic in this movie. I thought she absolutely commanded the screen every minute of this film. So that's just my thoughts on Kristen Stewart, and I think she was amazing in this movie. Also, justice for John Gallagher Jr. for surviving this sci-fi horror, after he didn't make it out of the last one that he was in, of course, that being 10 Cloverfield Lane. So, in the end, him and Jessica Henwick's characters both take the last two working escape pods, and they get to make it out alive. Their characters were actually in a relationship, and I appreciated the fact that, you could really feel like, okay, yeah, these two people are really in love with each other, and they're going to do everything that they can to survive together, even though they're both terrified. And the fact that, much like in 10 Cloverfield Lane, John Gallagher Jr. is really injured throughout most of this movie, where he's just literally getting dragged across to safety by, of course, his girlfriend and Kristen Stewart. So, yeah, in the end, Kristen Stewart stays behind to blow up the entire rig, killing all the sea monsters and the mega Cthulhu-looking monster that was controlling them all, and that circles back to what she saw herself from the captain in his death, when he realized, hey, if we just both keep sinking down together, we're both going to get killed by water pressure. So he forced her to let him go so that he could sacrifice himself, and so that she can live, and so that she can keep fighting, because he knew that she was one of the stronger fighters that was still trying to survive with them. And I think that when she learned that from him, and just the selflessness that she saw from her captain and from the young man who saved her in the very beginning, I think that was a great callback to the things that she's learned, and it's about character growth. And sure, yeah, she learns now that, hey, all three of us aren't going to make it out alive. Only two of us are, and it has to be you two, because you two have each other. You have each other to live for. So I just really like that. I really like that for the character. And so she blows the whole station up, and everyone in the ocean, all those monsters, they just get wiped out. And speaking of those monsters, I love the design for the sea monsters. They were very formidable. There's a moment where she's fighting with one of them, and it's like trying to swallow her alive, and she has to like shoot it from the inside, and she has to rip through its body and its skin to get out of it. That was such a great sequence. Very suspenseful. I love the way their bodies moved in the water. It just looked very alien and very strange. So I thought that worked. And they weren't even the biggest threat, both literally and figuratively, because, like I said, this giant Cthulhu-looking being shows up in the end and damn near kills all of them. And so that's the reason why she has to like blow up the entire station, the entire rig, so that John Gallagher Jr. and Jessica Henwick's character could both escape alive, because the creatures were still following them. But that monster, it looked awesome. It looked freaky. And I'm just so thankful, I guess, to see a sci-fi creature thriller with a budget like this. So huge props to the director, William Eubank. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing his last name correctly, but I thought he did a wonderful job. The screenwriters, Brian Duffield and Adam Kazad, I think that they did a really fine job with this movie. Again, I'm not saying that this movie reinvents the wheel and that you've never seen a movie like this before, because we have. There's Alien. There's, even with the recent Prometheus, Ridley Scott has this genre down to a T. There was that one recent sci-fi movie in space. I believe it was like about 10 years ago, Pandorum. So, we've seen these types of movies, but I just think that it was just so well executed that I don't mind that there's been other movies similar to this in the past. So overall, this is the second entry into the Is It Scary series. We started off this series last week with The Grudge, which was a major disappointment. It wasn't scary. I wouldn't recommend it. This movie does get a pass for the Is It Scary series. I think that there's some very intense, some even respectable jump scares in there that I very much appreciated and very much enjoyed watching. I had a big smile on my face the entire time I was watching this movie, and there were moments where I was even on the edge of my seat, like, wow, I don't know what to expect next. So yeah, this is a huge recommendation for me. It doesn't feel like a January movie at all. It delivers on the action, on the scares. it has everything you want from it. So yeah, huge recommendation from me. But yeah, if you like this sort of movie news and movie reviews, well, you're already in the right place. And consider subscribing to the channel, because I'd love to have you along for the ride. I love talking to you guys about movies and shows. So yeah, until next time, guys, this has been Millennium Movies, and I will see you all very soon.